No matter where or when you are, I'm glad you're here. So, lie back if you can, and let your thoughts slow down to the pace of plate tectonics. Tonight, we will drift together, softly and slowly, into a world far older than anything you have known, a world 3 billion years ago. Before we begin, allow your body to settle. Let your shoulders melt into the surface beneath you. Let your hands rest, your legs sink, and your mind ease into a gentle rhythm. Each breath is a soft wave, each exhale a letting go. Let your awareness stretch outward, beyond the hours, beyond the days, beyond even the centuries. We are about to enter a kind of deep time, a vast, quiet expanse where the earth itself moves slowly, with patience and grace. Imagine now the earth as it might have appeared then. Not the bustling, noisy planet we know today, but a young, evolving sphere, wrapped in clouds of strange gases, dotted with scattered land masses and endless, calm oceans. The sky above is unfamiliar, perhaps tinged with soft orange or red light, a different quality of sunlight filtering through an atmosphere still finding its balance. Everything seems slow, deliberate, even in its invisibility. Mountains have not yet fully risen. Rivers carve gentle furrows rather than deep canyons. The oceans sway with a patient rhythm that has no hurry. There is a profound silence, not a silence of absence, but a silence full of potential. The earth is alive, moving, changing, but it does so on a timetable so vast that it almost seems motionless. As you breathe, notice how the concept of time itself feels different here. 1 second for you is like a heartbeat. 1 million years for the earth is a fleeting moment. Yet these long spans are where life begins to stir, where the first tiny traces of existence leave hints in the rocks and waters. In this immense, slow-moving canvas, even the smallest gestures, chemical reactions in shallow pools, drifting sediments, the first whispers of life matter, in ways we are only beginning to understand. Think of this introduction as a kind of bridge. You are leaving behind the familiar rhythms of today, your phone, your responsibilities, the hum of city life, and stepping into a realm where patience is not learned but inherent. The planet itself has its own breathing, its own quiet heartbeat, measured in drifting continents and the slow accumulation of sediments. Here, there is no need to rush. There is no need to solve anything, to answer anything. The geological record is full of gaps, and much remains unseen. That is part of its beauty. The earth remembers only in whispers, residues, transformations, chemical echoes, patterns more stubborn than stone. Most of what happens fades. Not hidden, just undone, absorbed into the flow of time. As you imagine this world, allow yourself to notice the contrast with your own experience. We are brief guests in our own lifetimes, and yet even here, in this mental journey to 3 billion years ago, we can witness patience, persistence, and subtle beauty. We can feel the quiet miracle of existence itself. Now, gently, let your mind wander over the surface of this early earth. The oceans stretch endlessly, reflecting light that is different from ours. Land masses drift slowly, breaking the surface here and there, hinting at the continents that will one day form. Clouds move with a soft, persistent rhythm. Imagine the air around you thick with nitrogen, speckled with carbon dioxide, methane, and faint hints of ammonia. The atmosphere is young, tender, still learning its balance, just as you are learning to sink into rest. No detail is too small to notice. The tiniest ripple in a shallow tide pool, the faintest shimmer of sunlight through orange skies, the slow folding of newly forming rock layers. These are the patterns that tell the story of this ancient world. Let your mind follow them, slowly, gently, without needing to fix, analyze, or conclude. As we rest here together, consider this. Even now, As you breathe and relax, you are participating in something timeless. Sleep, too, is a kind of deep timer sinking into layers, quiet, vast, unlit by certainty. And just as Earth has its rhythms, so too do your own body and mind. Let them guide you as you journey further. And now, let us drift a little further, imagining the first great expanses of water on this ancient planet. And now, let us drift a little further, imagining the first great expanses of water on this ancient planet. Picture, if you will, a world wrapped in vast oceans. Water covers much of the surface, stretching endlessly in gentle rolling swells. There are no crashing waves or storm-tossed seas as we often imagine today, just the patient rhythm of liquid flowing over rock and sediment, moving slowly, quietly, over millions of years. Let your mind wander over these waters. Feel their presence, even if only as an idea. The ocean is soft yet enduring, a mirror to the sky, absorbing sunlight, reflecting it, and carrying subtle warmth across the young earth. Imagine dipping your hand into these waters, feeling not cold or hot, but a calm, steady temperature, a gentle cradle for the life that is beginning to stir. These early oceans were different from ours now. They carried dissolved minerals, iron that gave some patches a reddish tint, small traces of carbon, and other chemicals. Over time, these waters would slowly transform the land they touched. In their quiet currents, patterns emerged, patterns too slow, too gentle to notice in a single moment, but persistent over millennia. Sediment settled in layers, some soft, some firm, each recording the passage of invisible currents and tides, almost like the pages of an unending book. Imagine drifting above these waters, as if flying slowly, without wings or hurry. Here and there, small islands and rocky outcrops break the surface. Continents do not yet exist as we know them, but small clusters of rock drift and shift in the liquid vastness. They rise, they sink, they shift imperceptibly, yet they move, carrying the promise of mountains and valleys that will come much later. Notice the silence of this world. The water moves, yet it makes no noise that disturbs. The air is still. It is a soundless symphony, a deep, vast calm. And now, consider the quality of light in this scene. The sun is there, soft, filtered through an atmosphere that is thick with gases. Rays of orange and red touch the water, creating gentle glimmers and reflections. The ocean's surface responds slowly, rocking and bending these rays into patterns of quiet beauty. Watch these patterns ripple and stretch, subtle, meditative, like gentle breathing. Within this water, the earliest chemical reactions of life find a home. Minerals drift down from distant volcanic eruptions, from the land masses that do exist, and slowly, over time, mix with the waters to create new combinations. It is in these gentle chemical dances that the whispers of life begin, almost imperceptible, but present nonetheless. Patterns form, dissolve, and reform residues that might, in time, leave their mark in stone. Imagine sitting beside these ancient oceans, letting their rhythms become your own. Let your breathing match the swell and fall of the waters. Each inhale draws in calm. Each exhale releases tension. Time here has a different shape. It stretches, flows, and folds over itself like the currents in these ancient seas. One ripple might take 1,000 years to fully settle. One breath, a moment in comparison. And yet, both exist here, in this quiet, reflective space. Notice how the waters interact with the rocky surfaces beneath them. Some rocks rise like gentle hills, guiding the flow. Some sediments sink slowly, forming layers that, in our distant future, will be read like messages from this ancient world. Everything here seems subtle, quiet, patient. And yet, even in this stillness, transformation is constant. Nothing hurries. Everything persists. And now, let your imagination drift further, imagining what might dwell within these waters. Not creatures as we know them, not fish or whales, but tiny, almost invisible forms. Microbes and other primitive life, swimming or floating, interacting in ways we cannot see directly. Their presence is quiet, almost ghostly, but their persistence is extraordinary. Each minute movement, each chemical exchange, each tiny transformation leaves a faint trace, a whisper in the water, a hint in the sediment, a slow, patient record of life beginning. These oceans are more than water. They are memory, patience, and possibility made tangible. They hold the early earth in their folds, soft yet enduring, carrying the beginnings of patterns that will later evolve into the rich complexity of life. Let yourself float with them. Imagine your thoughts dissolving into this calm, letting your mind drift like a leaf across the water's surface. And as you drift, notice the quiet philosophical truth of this world. Most of what occurs here will leave no lasting mark. Rocks erode, sediments shift, currents erase the past. Yet, even in this forgetting, there is beauty. Even in absence, there is pattern. The earth is patient, persistent, unhurried, a teacher of calm, a guide to letting go. And now, as we let this thought settle, allow yourself to feel a gentle permission to rest. The oceans have carried time for billions of years. You can carry your thoughts for a little while tonight, and then release them. Sleep, like these waters, is a gentle flow, a slow surrender to layers unseen. And soon, when you are ready, we will drift a little further, imagining the first delicate whispers of life emerging from these calm, mineral-rich oceans, leaving patterns that time itself might someday remember. And now, let us drift a little further, letting the calm oceans of early Earth carry us gently into the quiet miracle of life itself. Picture the waters you have been imagining. Beneath the soft waves, in shallow pools and gentle currents, life begins its subtle, patient dance. Not as creatures we might recognize, not as fish or plants, but as tiny, almost imperceptible forms, microbes. These small beings are the first whispers of life, existing at a scale so delicate that a single breath from the future could disturb them. And yet, they persist. Allow yourself to imagine them moving slowly, drifting, dividing, transforming. Some float freely, guided by currents and subtle chemical gradients. Others anchor themselves to rocks or sediments, forming gentle mats across the shallow seafloor. These mats are communities, intricate in ways that are invisible at first glance, yet full of interaction, cooperation, and persistence. Over time, the layering of these microbial mats gives rise to structures called stromatolites. Picture them forming slowly, like gentle mounds or rippling terraces in the water. Each layer is laid down patiently, building on the one beneath it, accumulating slowly over thousands, perhaps millions of years. Their shapes are shaped not by force or urgency, but by persistence, by subtle responses to sunlight, water, and mineral deposits. Notice how the sunlight interacts with these mats. Even in the faint orange-tinted light of the early atmosphere, there is energy, a quiet nourishment. Some of these microbes begin to capture this energy through the very first steps of photosynthesis. They are tiny alchemists of light, converting sunlight into energy, gently, silently. This process is slow, almost imperceptible, but over vast spans of time, it begins to transform the oceans themselves, changing chemical balances in ways that will echo across billions of years. Imagine hovering over these formations, watching the slow layering, watching the faint shimmer of microbial life in the water. It is mesmerizing in its patience. The stromatolites grow, crumble, reform, layer upon layer, recording their existence in stone. They are reminders that life does not always demand spectacle to leave a mark. Sometimes it leaves whispers, traces of persistence, of resilience, of subtle creativity. Now, let us notice the quiet philosophical lesson here. Most life, most activity does not make a grand display. Most of it is hidden, slow, almost unnoticed. Yet, even in its quietness, it matters. Even the tiniest microbial mat over millions of years shapes the world. You can imagine your own thoughts, your own moments as little ripples in a vast expanse. They may seem small, fleeting, even invisible, but their presence, their persistence, leaves patterns too subtle to measure, yet real all the same. Let your breathing align with this rhythm. Inhale slowly, imagining the expansion of these microbial mats. Exhale, releasing tension, letting go of urgency, allowing yourself to merge, in thought, with the patient currents of early oceans. Notice how the slow layering of time mirrors your own resting process. Each thought, each breath, layers gently on the previous, forming a soft foundation for rest. Consider, too, the chemical echoes these microbes leave behind. They alter the water, leaving faint signatures in sediments, subtle hints of the energy they harnessed and the life they carried. Some of these patterns will be preserved, enduring far longer than any single moment, a quiet testament to persistence. And yet, most of it fades, absorbed into the unhurried flow of the ocean. This is the nature of deep time. It preserves only what is stubborn enough, persistent enough, to remain. And now, let your mind wander over the ocean floor, drifting slowly across vast expanses of stromatolites, observing their shapes and textures without needing to catalogue or name them. Some rise like gentle hills, others form ripples and terraces. They sway with the faintest movements of water, responding to light, minerals, and the quiet rhythm of existence itself. Everything is slow, deliberate, patient, beautiful in subtle ways. In these moments, you can reflect on impermanence, on continuity, and on quiet resilience. Life is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is almost invisible, yet profound. Sometimes it teaches without words, without spectacle. These microbes, these stromatolites, remind us that persistence, patience, and gentle accumulation are as powerful as sudden change or noise. As you continue to drift, imagine the waters above these microbial mats, carrying warmth, minerals, and faint sunlight. Imagine your own mind drifting in parallel, allowing questions to float by without urgency. Some may linger, some may pass unnoticed. In sleep, like in these ancient oceans, questions meet you in passing, not always with answers, but with gentle companionship. And now, gently as you let these thoughts settle, feel a quiet permission to rest. The microbial mats will continue their slow work, the stromatolites will grow in their patient rhythm, and the oceans will carry time forward. You too can release, letting your thoughts fold into layers of calm. Sleep, like deep time, is a gentle flow, a quiet surrender to the rhythms of existence. When you are ready, we will drift a little further, imagining the first slow transformations of sunlight into energy photosynthesis, and how these tiny, persistent beings began to change the world in subtle, enduring ways. And now, let us drift a little further, letting our minds follow the slow, gentle rhythm of the oceans and the stromatolites, toward the first quiet transformations of sunlight into energy photosynthesis. Picture the tiny microbial mats you have been observing. They bask in the muted light, filtering through the young atmosphere, soft rays of orange and red brushing the surface of the water. Imagine this sunlight not as a harsh, sudden force, but as a gentle, nourishing presence. It flows across the water, touches the microbes, and is slowly transformed. In these small, subtle ways, energy begins to enter life itself. The microbes are quiet alchemists. With almost imperceptible movements, they capture light, converting it into energy to sustain themselves. This process is neither urgent nor flashy. It is slow, deliberate, a careful unfolding that has profound consequences across vast stretches of time. Imagine these transformations as gentle pulses, tiny sparks of activity, spreading invisibly through the oceans. As you imagine this, feel your own body in parallel. Each breath is a gentle transformation. Each exhale carries tension away. Each inhale brings in calm. Like sunlight touching the waters, life's energy moves subtly, patiently, layer by layer, building on what came before. Notice how slow and deliberate this process is, how much it teaches about patience, about persistence, about the quiet accumulation of change. Think now of the chemical shifts these early photosynthetic microbes create. Oxygen, tiny traces at first, begins to form in the water. Most of it reacts immediately with iron and other compounds, leaving faint signatures. Yet, over millions of years, this slow accumulation will reshape the atmosphere itself. Imagine it as a whisper, a small but enduring effect that will eventually transform the Earth in ways no one alive today could fully see. Let your mind follow this rhythm. Observe the interplay of light, water, and life. The sun touches the microbial mats, the mats respond, energy flows, and subtle patterns emerge. All of it unfolds slowly, over spans of time so long they feel eternal. This is the nature of deep time. Monumental change begins in whispers, small movements, patient persistence. Consider, too, the philosophical reflection in this process. Most transformations are invisible in the moment. Most effects cannot be immediately seen or understood. And yet, they are powerful, profound, and enduring. In this, the early Earth mirrors our own inner lives. Small, quiet efforts, persistence over time, subtle attention to energy and light. These can shape worlds we cannot yet imagine. As you continue to drift, notice the repetition and layering inherent in photosynthesis. Sunlight comes, energy flows, oxygen forms, chemical bonds shift, patterns develop. These layers accumulate like gentle waves on the ocean, or like breaths layering within you. Each repetition is a building block, creating stability in structure, even in subtle, almost imperceptible ways. Allow yourself to feel this gentle rhythm as part of your own mind. Your thoughts may drift like tiny particles in a current. Some will settle, some will continue onward. There is no need to control or force them. In sleep, as in deep time, patience is the guide. Energy moves slowly, quietly, persistently, without hurry, without alarm, without expectation. Now, drift a little further, imagining the soft, layered mounds of stromatolites absorbing this faint light. Their slow growth is guided by sunlight, by energy, by chemical balance. They are more than structures, they are living records of persistence and transformation. Picture the gentle undulations of these mats, touched by light and water, forming layers that will endure far longer than any one moment. Think also of the contrast between impermanence and endurance. Most of the world is erased, reshaped, forgotten. Yet these chemical traces, these slow accumulations of energy and oxygen, will persist. Even tiny acts, repeated over time, can leave enduring marks. Let this remind you that calm persistence, gentle attention, and patience are profound forces, both in nature and within yourself. As the scene unfolds, notice the soft interplay of light across the waters. The sun filters through the young atmosphere, touching the mats and currents, gently bending and scattering. Some microbes float, some anchor, and each interacts with sunlight in its own small way. It is a quiet dance of transformation, slow and subtle, yet powerful in its patience. And now, as you settle deeper into this vision, allow yourself to release. The microbes continue their slow work. The stromatolites grow layer by layer. Sunlight touches water, and energy flows invisibly. And you too can rest. Sleep, like photosynthesis, is a slow transformation, a gentle flow of energy, a quiet building of strength and calm, unseen but real. Let yourself drift further into the soft rhythms of this early earth. There is no need to hurry. Time flows differently here. The vast oceans, the patient microbes, the light transforming energy all exist in a quiet, enduring tempo. And in this tempo, you may feel the comfort of continuity, the gentle reassurance that persistence, even in silence, matters. Soon, when you are ready, we will drift a little further, imagining the accumulation of oxygen in the oceans, the slow shaping of the atmosphere, and the subtle ways that life begins to change the world itself. For now, simply rest, letting your mind flow with the waters, touched by light, layered in calm transformation, carried gently by deep time. And now, let us drift a little further, letting the gentle pulse of early oceans carry us toward a time when life begins to shape the world itself, through the patient work of stromatolites and the slow transformation of the waters and atmosphere. Picture once again the microbial mats in shallow, sunlit waters. They have been forming layers for countless cycles, responding to light, water, and minerals in ways so subtle that only deep time could reveal their patterns. Some float freely, some anchor firmly to rock, creating layered mounds that rise softly from the ocean floor. These are the stromatolites, slow-growing, enduring, patient, like quiet monuments to persistence itself. Now imagine them in motion, not fast or dramatic, but slow, almost imperceptible. Each layer forms over days, months, centuries, gently accumulating minerals and organic material. Each layer records a tiny story. A shift in water chemistry, a faint change in sunlight, a small adjustment in the microbial community. Over millions of years, these patterns build a record of life's presence. A record written in stone, slow as the turning of the earth itself. As you picture this, allow your mind to settle alongside it. Feel the patient rhythm of the layers forming, the quiet accumulation of time, the gentle shaping of the world. Notice how small, almost invisible processes energy absorbed from light, oxygen released into the water can ripple outward, shaping environments far beyond themselves. In this, the stromatolites are teachers, showing that even the tiniest persistence can have monumental effects. Now consider the waters themselves. The microbes are beginning to alter the chemistry of the oceans. Oxygen, produced slowly through photosynthesis, starts to accumulate in tiny, uneven concentrations. At first, much of it reacts immediately with iron and other minerals, forming subtle bands of oxidized sediment, soft reds, gentle browns, faint traces that speak of transformation without drama. Over countless millennia, these traces will grow, layer upon layer, hinting at the slow shaping of the oceans and eventually, the atmosphere above. As you breathe, imagine yourself as part of this rhythm. Each inhalation is a gentle wave, each exhalation a layering of calm. Like the oceans, like the stromatolites, you are part of a slow, patient transformation. There is no rush. There is only continuity, quiet accumulation, persistence that matters more than speed. Notice the reflections of sunlight on these waters. Gentle orange and red light filters through the early atmosphere, touching the surface of the oceans and the stromatolite mats. Each shimmer is soft, almost imperceptible, yet constant. The light interacts with the layers, creating patterns that are fleeting and enduring at the same time. Watch these patterns ripple and fold, and let yourself fold with them. Breathing slowly, settling gently into calm. Now consider the larger philosophical rhythm. The oceans, the stromatolites, the slowly accumulating oxygen, most of these processes are invisible to the casual observer. Most of the changes will leave only subtle traces, barely perceptible in the geological record. And yet they are profound. They remind us that small, patient efforts, repeated over long spans, shape the world. Most life leaves quiet echoes, not dramatic signatures. Even absence and forgetting are part of the pattern of deep time. As you continue to drift, imagine the accumulation of oxygen in the water beginning to influence other chemical balances. The oceans gradually become more hospitable to forms of life that may come later. Mineral deposits, dissolved compounds, and slowly forming layers of sediment all interact in gentle, complex ways. Nothing is sudden. Nothing is urgent. The world itself is teaching patience, persistence, and calm observation. Allow yourself to reflect on impermanence and continuity. Most of what occurs in life, and in the deep history of the Earth, fades. Rocks erode, sediments shift, traces vanish. And yet, some patterns endure stubborn, persistent, slow building. In this, there is a quiet reassurance. Even if much is lost, the work of time itself continues. And in sleep, as in deep time, rest is part of the process. Release. Let go. Let the slow rhythms of the earth guide you into calm. Now imagine floating above the waters, seeing the subtle patterns of stromatolites across the shallow ocean floor. Some rise like soft hills, others ripple in delicate terraces. Each is a gentle record of persistence, an enduring story told in layers of stone and living matter. Over millions of years, these formations will continue to shape the chemistry of the oceans, preparing the stage for the world to come. And as you watch, let your mind also imagine the connection to your own world. Your thoughts, like the oxygen produced by photosynthetic microbes, are subtle energies that can transform your inner environment. Each calm breath, each moment of reflection, each gentle observation accumulates, layer upon layer, building a foundation of peace, awareness, and quiet resilience. So rest now, not because the transformations are complete, but because you have carried them far enough for one night. The stromatolites will continue their patient work. The oceans will continue their gentle shaping. The earth will keep moving, layer by layer, wave by wave. And you too may drift deeper into calm, into the slow accumulation of rest and renewal. Even by listening, even by imagining, you are participating in something vast and enduring, something that connects patience, persistence, and quiet presence across billions of years. The past will wait. The earth will keep spinning. And you are here now, resting in the calm embrace of deep time. And soon, when you are ready, we will drift a little further, imagining the slow drift of continents, the movements of tectonic plates, and the quiet shaping of the land above and beneath these ancient oceans. And now, let us drift a little further, lifting our gaze from the gentle waters, the patient stromatolites, and the quiet accumulation of oxygen, to the slow, powerful rhythms of the land itself, the drifting continents, and the shaping of the Earth's surface. Imagine the oceans stretching endlessly, dotted here and there by small rocky outcrops. These are the earliest fragments of continents, young, scattered, and slowly moving across the planet's surface. They are not yet the great familiar landmasses of today. They drift, collide, separate, and sometimes sink beneath the waves. Their movement is imperceptibly slow to the human mind, yet relentless over millions of years, a patient shaping of the world's skeleton. Let your imagination follow one of these drifting land fragments. Perhaps it is a small island, rising gently from the ocean, composed of granite and basalt, cooled from ancient volcanic activity. Feel its quiet presence, solid and enduring, yet always in motion. Even as it shifts imperceptibly, it carries with it minerals, sediments, and the potential for life. It is a slow dance of endurance and change, a quiet rhythm that will continue for eons. Notice how the land interacts with the oceans. Waves lap against its edges, eroding and smoothing. Rain may fall, softly at first, carrying minerals and sediments into the water. Tiny chemical exchanges occur at the boundary between land and sea, each one insignificant in a moment, yet meaningful over the grand sweep of time. The land is patient, persistent, a companion to the flowing oceans. Now imagine multiple fragments drifting toward one another. Sometimes they meet, slowly colliding to form larger landmasses. Sometimes they part, carving shallow seas between them. These movements are tectonic, a quiet, unstoppable process of creation and transformation. Mountains may begin as gentle rises, folded softly, pushed upward by invisible forces beneath the surface. Valleys form as land shifts and settles. The land itself is learning to breathe and move, like the living oceans around it. As you visualize this, allow your own breathing to mirror these slow rhythms. Inhale, feeling expansion, as continents rise imperceptibly over vast time. Exhale, sensing settling, the gentle folding of rocks and sediment. Each breath aligns with the patience of the earth, a meditation in motion, quiet and unhurried. Now consider the philosophical lesson of tectonics. Even forces so immense as moving continents are subtle when experienced in a single moment. One day, 1 year, even 1 century is hardly perceptible. Yet over millions, billions of years, these movements transform the planet entirely. Let this remind you that patience, persistence, and gentle accumulation matter profoundly, sometimes invisibly, sometimes quietly, sometimes unseen, yet endlessly impactful. Notice the textures of the land as it drifts. Rough basalt cliffs softened by waves, mineral-rich shores feeding the oceans, cracks and folds in stone that hint at forces beneath. Tiny particles from these movements settle into the water, nourishing microbial life. Tiny chemical shifts accumulate slowly, quietly, changing the oceans in ways only apparent to the distant future. Everything is connected, every motion layered, every interaction a part of the planet's patient unfolding. Now drift with your mind over slowly rising plateau, watching its slopes interact with the ocean and sky. Perhaps a storm passes in the distance, not violent, but soft, bringing water and erosion. Rain falling in gentle pulses, nourishing the early microbial mats along the edges of the sea. Observe the quiet harmony of these processes. Land, water, life, and light all moving slowly, shaping each other, teaching patience in ways no sudden event. As you continue to drift, reflect on the impermanence and continuity of these movements. Some fragments of land may vanish beneath the ocean. Some may collide and form mountains. Some traces of life may be erased, yet the process continues. The planet itself is patient, enduring, unhurried. And so too can your mind settle, flowing with the slow unfolding of Earth, letting thoughts pass gently, noticing without needing to grasp or hold. Feel now the vastness of deep time. These land fragments have been moving for millions of years, carrying oceans, minerals, and life with them. Mountains rise and fall. Seas shift. Continents collide and drift apart. All of it unfolds in quiet, steady motion. There is no urgency, no rush, only the patient accumulation of change. Let yourself float in this calm awareness. aligned with the enduring rhythm of the earth itself. And as you watch, consider your own presence. You are a fleeting guest in the scale of deep time. Yet even in this quiet observation, you participate in something vast. You witness the slow shaping of worlds, the patient unfolding of life, water, and land. Even in stillness, even in rest, there is connection between mind and planet, between observer and observed, between past, present, and the slow accumulation of future possibilities. So rest now, not because the land has reached its final shape, but because you have carried yourself gently through its movement for tonight. The continents will continue their patient drift. The oceans will continue their quiet rhythms. Stromatolites will grow in shallow waters. And you too may drift deeper into calm, layer by layer, like the land and seas, carried gently by the patient currents of time. And soon, when you are ready, we will drift a little further, imagining the subtle chemical traces left behind in rocks and water, the hidden stories of life preserved in stone, and the reflections of deep time that echo in every quiet corner of the earth. And now, let us drift a little further, letting our awareness settle into the quiet, hidden stories that the earth carries in its rocks, its waters, and the very chemistry of its surface. Picture the early oceans and the drifting land fragments we have imagined. Imagine looking closer, past the gentle waves, past the small hills of stromatolites, into the very substance of the water and sediments themselves. Here, in subtle traces and faint chemical signatures, the earth tells its most delicate stories. Whispers of life, transformation, and persistence. Imagine tiny molecules floating in the water, some formed by volcanic activity, others carried by rain, currents, or the slow erosion of rock. These molecules interact in quiet, intricate dances, forming new compounds, leaving traces of activity, hinting at processes that cannot be seen with the naked eye. They are not dramatic. They are not meant to be noticed in a single glance. Yet, over millions of years, they record a story of change, of energy, of life beginning to leave its mark. Let your mind drift through these chemical echoes. Picture patterns forming in the sediments, tiny deposits of carbon, subtle isotopic shifts, traces of reactions that occurred long ago. These are the fingerprints of existence, almost invisible, yet enduring. They tell us that even the smallest act of life, every exchange of energy, every transformation of molecules matters in the vast scale of time. Now consider the philosophical lesson here. Most of what occurs in the world is erased, transformed, or absorbed into the ongoing flow of events. Yet, some traces persist, stubbornly, quietly, waiting to be noticed by someone far in the future. In this, we find both humility and wonder. The earth remembers only enough to hint at its history, but it also allows us glimpses into processes far beyond our daily perception. As you breathe, imagine your own thoughts as part of this hidden record. Some are fleeting, some persistent. Some leave traces, subtle changes in your mind or heart. Just as molecules in ancient oceans react and transform slowly over time, so too do your experiences accumulate, layer by layer, quietly shaping who you are. There is no rush, no need to analyze. Simply observe, breathe, and let your awareness flow. Now imagine drifting gently over sediments where chemical traces are recorded. Some are simple, small, almost imperceptible shifts in carbon ratios. Some hint at oxygen slowly accumulating in the oceans. Some indicate the presence of tiny life forms that existed billions of years ago, leaving patterns in stone that will survive long after individual moments have passed. These traces are subtle, yet they endure. They are patience made visible, history written in quiet persistence. Picture a single layer of sediment. Perhaps it was formed by a calm settling of particles in a shallow tide pool. Within it, a trace of life, a slightly altered ratio of isotopes, a microscopic deposit of organic carbon. Nothing about it screams for attention. It does not demand notice. And yet, over billions of years, this quiet record becomes a key to understanding a world long vanished. Watch it slowly, gently, as if noticing a secret being revealed in the calmest possible way. Notice the gentle interplay of water, minerals, and life. A chemical reaction here, a trace of organic matter there. Over time, these traces build a map of persistence, continuity, and quiet transformation. Every molecule is part of a story. Every subtle change in sediment is a note in the symphony of early Earth. Let your mind follow these patterns, drifting without urgency, aligning with the calm tempo of slow, patient change. As you continue, reflect on the impermanence and endurance of this hidden record. Most actions leave no trace. Most movements are absorbed into the flow of time. Yet some traces endure, stubbornly, quietly, patiently. They are like whispers in a vast hall, faint but meaningful. And in this quiet persistence there is reassurance. Even in small, nearly invisible ways, life leaves an impact. Now imagine that you are floating above these sediments, looking down across a landscape of subtle chemical signatures. Some layers are darker, some lighter, some carry hints of oxygen, some are enriched in carbon. Each one tells a story, not complete, not dramatic, but enduring in its own quiet way. These are the hidden stories of life, the patient work of molecules and microbes, creating patterns that speak across eons. And as you settle into this vision, notice how the story of chemical traces mirrors your own rest. Sleep, too, is a quiet layering of experiences, thoughts, and reflections. Each moment adds to a foundation, subtle and enduring, shaping your inner landscape without hurry or drama. The earth teaches patience, resilience, and the gentle accumulation of change. So rest now, not because the stories are fully revealed, but because you have carried them far enough for tonight. The sediments will continue to form. The chemical traces will continue their quiet record. Stromatolites will persist. Oceans will flow. Continents will drift. And you too may sink deeper into calm, aligning your own rhythm with the patient, enduring tempo of the ancient earth. Even by imagining these hidden stories, you are participating in a timeless act, observing, witnessing, and connecting with the patient unfolding of life across deep time. The past will wait. The earth will continue its quiet shaping. And you are here now, resting in the calm embrace of continuity, transformation, and enduring wonder. And soon, when you are ready, we will drift a little further, imagining the philosophical reflections of deep time, impermanence, and the quiet rhythms that connect the earth, life, and your own mind. And now, let us drift a little further, leaving the layers of sediment, stromatolites, and drifting continents behind, and allowing ourselves to sink gently into the quiet, contemplative rhythms of deep time itself. Picture the Earth as it was 3 billion years ago. Oceans stretch across vast expanses. Tiny microbial mats form quiet patterns on the shallow floors. Land fragments drift slowly, tectonic forces shaping mountains, valleys, and shorelines in a patient, unhurried tempo. Life is small, subtle, almost invisible, yet persistent. In this perspective, notice the sheer scale of time, the slow unfolding of processes far longer than a human lifetime, far longer than the span of any single thought. Now, reflect on impermanence. Most of what occurs in life and in the deep history of the earth is fleeting. Rocks erode, oceans shift, microbial mats are buried, transformed, or forgotten. Chemical traces dissolve. Most things vanish without notice. And yet, even in this quiet vanishing, there is meaning. Even absence has a rhythm. Even forgetting is part of the dance of deep time. Let your thoughts settle into this awareness. Each breath becomes a mirror of the slow unfolding of Earth. Inhale, feeling continuity and connection. Exhale, letting go of urgency, of expectation, of the need to understand everything at once. Notice how calm and unhurried this perspective feels. You are aligned with processes that are vast, enduring, and patient. Consider also the quiet persistence of life. Even when almost invisible, even when subtle and fragile, life leaves traces. Tiny transformations accumulate. Small acts ripple outward. Energy flows, chemicals shift, and patterns endure. This is the nature of deep time. Monumental effects often emerge from persistent, gentle processes. You can imagine your own thoughts and actions in the same way, layered, subtle, meaningful, even when nearly imperceptible. Now, allow your mind to wander over the Earth's ancient surface. Imagine the still waters reflecting a soft, filtered light. Notice the tiny traces of oxygen in the oceans, the gentle growth of stromatolites, the slow drift of continents. Everything moves at a patient tempo. Nothing is rushed. Time itself feels different here, fluid, layered, continuous. And as you observe, feel yourself adopting the same calm, measured pace. Think about the rhythms that surround you, the rise and fall of waves, the slow layering of sediments, the cycles of light and shadow on water. Even your own breathing becomes part of this rhythm, an echo of the gentle, unhurried flow of the early Earth. Notice how aligned your body, your mind, and your imagination feel with the quiet pulse of deep time. As you drift, consider questions without expecting answers. What if countless worlds, countless stories, have come and gone before ours? What traces remain, and what has vanished? The Earth does not demand our understanding. It allows glimpses, hints, whispers. You may hold these questions lightly, letting them move through your mind without urgency, meeting them in passing, allowing them companionship rather than resolution. Notice, too, the vastness of scale. Billions of years, measured not in days or centuries, but in eons. The life that persists in tiny microbial mats is part of a history that dwarfs any single moment. And yet you are here, aware, observing, reflecting. Even a brief presence is part of this vast tapestry, a subtle resonance in the ongoing rhythm of the planet. Allow yourself to feel connection. Connection to the oceans, to the land, to the microbial mats and stromatolites. Connection to the slow drift of continents, to the chemical traces preserved in stone. Connection to deep time itself. Even in rest, even in quiet observation, you are part of something enduring, something vast, something timeless. And now, let your mind consider the gentle paradox of impermanence and endurance. Most things vanish, most traces are erased, and yet, persistence exists in subtle, patient ways. Layers accumulate, energy flows, chemical reactions continue. Life transforms the planet slowly but inexorably. There is both humility and reassurance in this understanding. Even small, quiet actions matter when allowed to unfold over the vast span of time. As you continue to drift, imagine yourself sinking deeper into rest, letting the quiet rhythms of the Earth and the patient unfolding of deep time guide your awareness. Let each inhalation carry calm. Let each exhalation release tension, expectation, and worry. Feel yourself layered like sediments in the ocean floor, like the slow drift of continents aligned with the enduring, unhurried pulse of existence. Notice how calm observation, reflection, and patience are themselves forms of participation. Even without moving, even without acting, simply observing and imagining connects you to something vast. Your awareness is a quiet echo of the rhythms you have witnessed, the drift of continents, the layering of stromatolites, the accumulation of chemical traces, the slow transformation of light into energy. So rest now, not because questions are answered, but because you have carried them far enough for tonight. The earth will continue its slow work. Oceans will flow. Life will persist in quiet ways. Continents will drift, rise, and fall. And you too may sink deeper into calm, carried gently by the rhythms of deep time, by impermanence, by continuity, and by the quiet, enduring pulse of the planet itself. Even by listening, even by imagining, you are part of something profoundly human and perhaps universal. You are present in this rhythm of existence, resting alongside the earth, participating in its patient unfolding. The past will wait. The oceans will continue to flow. The land will continue to shift. And you are here now, gently, peacefully, fully present. And soon, when you are ready, we may drift a little further still, exploring the quiet lessons of impermanence and persistence in other forms of early Earth, the echoes of life and deep time, and the meditative calm that these vast scales can teach us about rest, presence, and renewal. And now, let us drift a little further, letting our attention move from the layers of stromatolites and drifting continents to a subtle, yet profound change beginning in the oceans and the air above. The first glimmers of oxygen. Picture the microbial mats and stromatolites continuing their patient work in shallow seas. They have been transforming sunlight into energy for millions of years, quietly releasing tiny amounts of oxygen into the surrounding water. At first, this oxygen is nearly invisible, immediately binding with iron and other chemicals, forming soft streaks of rust-colored mineral in the sediments. Notice these gentle hues: red, brown, faint traces that speak of transformation in progress, almost hidden, yet undeniable. As you follow this transformation, imagine the oceans absorbing and reacting to these small changes. Oxygen is not yet abundant in the atmosphere. Most of it lingers in the water, combining with minerals, forming faint bands in ancient rocks, whispering of chemical reactions that will gradually shape the planet. This process is slow, layered over countless millennia, but it will eventually set the stage for profound changes. Now consider the ocean currents. They carry oxygen slowly across vast stretches of water. Some regions are richer in oxygen than others. Chemical interactions occur at every depth, with dissolved iron, sulfur, and other elements responding to the presence of oxygen. These subtle shifts are the fingerprints of life on a planetary scale, revealing that even the smallest organisms can influence the vast Earth. Above the oceans, the atmosphere remains thin and fragile. Oxygen is present only in trace amounts. Most of it reacts immediately with gases and minerals, preventing any sudden accumulation. Imagine the faint light filtering through this young atmosphere, soft and diffuse, touching the water in gentle patterns. The air is not yet the breathable mixture we know today, yet it carries the quiet promise of transformation and invisible, patient change that will unfold across eons. Drift now to the edges of shallow waters, where oxygen interacts with sediments. Layers of rock form slowly, preserving chemical evidence of early life. These bands, layered over millions of years, record the persistent, patient work of photosynthetic microbes. They are subtle, almost imperceptible traces, yet they tell the story of the first real changes in the chemical composition of Earth's oceans. Notice, too, the balance between creation and limitation. Oxygen accumulates very slowly because the oceans and rocks absorb most of it. Only when the reservoirs of iron and other reactive elements gradually fill will oxygen begin to appear more freely in the water and, eventually, in the atmosphere. This patient interplay between life, water, minerals, and air defines much of the character of Earth 3 billion years ago. Now, Imagine standing at the edge of this ancient ocean, watching faint streaks of oxygen ripple through the water. Streams of chemical reactions continue without hurry, without spectacle, slowly transforming the planet's chemistry. Tiny particles of iron settle to the ocean floor, creating soft layered bands in the sediments. Each layer is a record, a quiet signature of life influencing Earth in a way that will only become obvious much later. Think of the consequences, still unfolding in silence. Over the next hundreds of millions of years, this slow accumulation of oxygen will eventually allow more complex chemistry, changing the oceans and the atmosphere in ways that will set the stage for future life forms. But for now, it is a quiet transformation, hidden in water and stone, subtle yet enduring. As you drift across this scene, notice how all these processes, microbes, oxygen, chemical reactions, sediments interact seamlessly. They are part of a vast system of quiet persistence. Nothing is dramatic, yet everything is meaningful. Every tiny bubble of oxygen, every faint layer of mineral, is part of a story billions of years in the making. And as we linger here, notice that 3 billion years ago, the Earth is still a young, fragile world, reshaping itself slowly. Continents drift, oceans flow, stromatolites grow, and oxygen begins its quiet work. Every element is connected: air, water, life, and rock, and every small transformation carries the seeds of Earth's future. So rest here for a moment in the calm presence of these ancient oceans. Watch the faint streaks of oxygen ripple through the water. Feel the patient, layered transformations of life and chemistry. Know that even in subtle, nearly invisible ways, the planet is shaping itself, quietly, persistently, over unimaginable spans of time. And soon, when you are ready, we may drift a little further, exploring how these chemical transformations in the oceans began to influence early minerals, sediments, and the slow shaping of the early continental crust, continuing the story of Earth 3 billion years ago. And now, let us drift a little further, turning our attention from the patient rise of oxygen in the oceans to the solid foundation of the planet itself, the slow formation of minerals and the earliest continental crust. Picture the young Earth, still restless from its formation. The seas ripple gently over rocky outcrops, and fragments of land drift slowly across the surface. Beneath the oceans, the planet's interior is hot, molten in places, slowly cooling, gently shaping the world above. In this cooling, the first solid minerals begin to crystallize. Imagine tiny grains of quartz, feldspar, and mica forming quietly within the molten rock. They settle, layer by layer, slowly creating the building blocks of the continental crust. Notice the patient accumulation. Minerals emerge, not all at once, not in sudden bursts, but in a gradual rhythm dictated by heat, pressure, and time. Each crystal grows slowly, subtly, joining others to form the first patches of solid land. These early continents are small, scattered, and fragile, yet they provide stability, places where oceans can lap gently, where microbial life can attach and thrive. Imagine floating above one of these early fragments. Its surface is rough and uneven, composed of interlocking minerals that have endured the slow cooling of magma. The edges of the fragment meet the ocean in shallow shelves, where sediments collect and chemical reactions occur. Tiny particles from volcanic activity fall into the water, adding trace elements that will slowly influence the chemistry of the seas. Consider the interaction between the crust and the oceans. Water seeps into cracks, interacting with minerals and subtle chemical reactions. Some elements dissolve into the oceans, supporting life in microscopic ways. Some minerals stabilize, forming the hard backbone of continents that may persist for hundreds of millions of years. Everything unfolds slowly, invisibly, yet each process leaves a lasting mark on the Earth. Now imagine the gradual thickening of these fragments. Over time, tectonic movements push, fold, and collide sections of crust. Mountains rise slowly, valleys deepen, and the earliest signs of continental topography appear. It is not sudden. There are no dramatic eruptions or cataclysms here, only the patient layering of rock, the quiet accumulation of minerals, the careful shaping of landscapes. Notice how this early crust carries the memory of the planet's interior. Each layer reflects heat, pressure, and chemical composition from billions of years of transformation. The minerals are like quiet witnesses, preserving a record of the Earth's earliest history. Even the tiniest grain of zircon or mica tells a story, a subtle whisper from a time long before complex life existed. Drift with your mind over these early continents. Picture shallow bays where stromatolites grow, where oxygen begins to mingle in the water, where sediments slowly accumulate at the edges. The crust provides structure, stability, and a foundation for further evolution of the planet. Notice the interconnectedness. Water, life, minerals, and rock, each one shaping the others, layer by layer, over immense spans of time. Reflect on the delicate balance of this early Earth. Too much volcanic activity could melt the crust. Too little movement could leave the continents thin and unstable. Yet, here they are, patient, enduring, forming gradually as the first solid stage for a world still young, still learning the rhythms of persistence. Every grain, every layer, every fold contributes to the quiet story of transformation. Now imagine the crust interacting with the emerging chemical traces in the oceans. Some minerals react with oxygen, forming subtle patterns in rock. Others remain stable, providing a canvas for sediments and microbial mats. Even at this early stage, the land and water are in dialogue, shaping each other in ways that will echo for billions of years. Picture the earliest continental fragments slowly drifting toward one another, colliding, pushing up low hills, and forming primitive mountain ranges. Observe the quiet, patient shaping of the Earth's surface. Notice how these early features will influence the movement of water, the accumulation of sediments, and the preservation of life's chemical traces. The Earth is building a foundation, slowly, meticulously, and without hurry. And as you drift above these formations, reflect on their endurance. Some fragments may eventually erode, sink, or be recycled into the mantle. Yet others will persist for vast spans of time, carrying the silent record of the early Earth within them. The minerals, sediments, and crust together form a layered story of transformation, one that continues to unfold quietly, steadily, over eons. So linger here a while, observing the early minerals crystallizing, the first continental fragments stabilizing, the patient layering of rock beneath the shallow seas. Notice how the land, water, and life are all interwoven, each influencing the others, each moving with a slow, deliberate rhythm. The Earth 3 billion years ago is fragile, dynamic, and quiet, yet it is building the stage for the future. Layer by layer, crystal by crystal, fragment by fragment. And soon, when you are ready, we may drift a little further, exploring the interactions of these emerging continents with early life forms, the subtle influence of tidal and oceanic movements, and the quiet shaping of the Earth's earliest ecological niches. And now, let us drift a little further, allowing ourselves to imagine the earliest ecological spaces, where life, water, and land quietly interacted, where the first patterns of environmental structure began to emerge. Picture the shallow edges of ancient oceans meeting the small drifting fragments of continental crust. Here, where water pools and sediments slowly settle, gentle ecological niches are forming. These are not landscapes filled with plants or animals as we know them, but subtle, interconnected spaces where microbes can attach, reproduce, and influence the environment. Notice how calm and unhurried these spaces feel, yet how full of quiet activity they are. Observe the gentle layering of sediments along the shallow shores. Tiny mineral grains settle from the water, providing surfaces for microbial mats to cling to. Stromatolites rise slowly in these niches, creating small structured formations that alter the flow of water around them. These mats not only survive but shape their surroundings, demonstrating the first interactions between living organisms and their physical environment. Now let your mind drift along the quiet waters, imagining pools of different sizes and depths. Each one provides a slightly different environment, some warmer, some richer in minerals, some carrying faint chemical traces from volcanic rock or drifting sediments. In each microenvironment, life responds differently. Oxygen, slowly released by photosynthetic microbes, begins to subtly alter the chemical composition of these pools. Some microbes thrive in oxygen-rich microzones, while others prefer areas still dominated by sulfur or iron. Notice the interplay between light, water, and life. Sunlight reaches the shallow waters at different angles, creating patterns of energy that organisms use to transform carbon and other nutrients. The gentle rhythm of waves and tides moves sediments, brings new nutrients, and carries microbial offspring to new locations. In this way, the physical environment and the early life forms are quietly shaping each other, a dance so slow that it unfolds over thousands or millions of years, yet profoundly significant. Consider the diversity of these early niches. Even though the life forms are microscopic, each niche is unique. Some may support thick microbial mats, others thin, sparse layers. Chemical conditions vary subtly, creating gradients of oxygen, carbon, sulfur, and iron. These gradients guide the development of ecosystems on the smallest scale, and yet they form the first ecological structures on Earth. Now drift closer to the edges of the continents. Notice shallow tidal flats forming where water flows in and out with gentle rhythms. Here, sediments accumulate in layers, subtly different from one another, creating additional surfaces for life to inhabit. Tiny changes in the minerals and chemistry of these flats influence which microbes can thrive, guiding the slow evolution of ecosystems over long spans of time. Observe the interactions between the living mats and the minerals beneath them. As microbes grow, they trap sediments and release chemical compounds, reinforcing their own habitats. Stromatolites become small but persistent features, altering water currents and influencing where other life can exist. In this gentle feedback loop, life and environment are shaping each other without urgency, each subtle action leaving traces that will persist in the rock record for billions of years. Let your awareness drift to chemical interactions in these niches. Oxygen produced in microenvironments reacts with iron and sulfur, forming soft colored bands in sediments. Tiny shifts in pH, mineral composition, and nutrient availability create subtle divisions between habitats. Even at this microscopic level, life is sculpting the environment, preparing the stage for more complex interactions that will unfold in the distant future. Consider the patient, layered rhythms of these early ecosystems. Life is not moving in leaps or sudden events. It is slow, deliberate, and persistent. The physical environment, the shallow waters, the drifting sediments, the edges of continents is equally patient, shaping and being shaped in return. Each niche is a quiet story of interaction, a small but essential piece of the vast, ongoing story of Earth. As you drift gently over these shallow waters and early continental edges, notice the interconnectedness of land, water, and life. The crust provides structure. The sediments provide surfaces. The water carries nutrients and energy. And life responds, adapts, and transforms its surroundings. Together, they form a network of ecological niches that is both simple and profound, subtle yet enduring. Finally, reflect on the significance of these early niches. Each small space is a laboratory of chemical and biological interaction, a testament to the patient-shaping power of life. The patterns set in motion, here microbial mats forming stromatolites, oxygen-altering chemistry, sediments layering slowly, will ripple forward across deep time. They are the first threads of Earth's ecological tapestry, threads that continue to influence the planet billions of years later. So linger here a moment, imagining the quiet, patient workings of these niches. Observe the gentle rhythms of water and sediment, the persistent growth of microbial mats, the subtle chemical shifts, and the slow shaping of early ecosystems. Each small interaction, each layered process, contributes to the larger story of Earth 3 billion years ago. A story written in patience, persistence, and delicate, enduring connections. And soon, when you are ready, we may drift a little further, exploring the interactions of these early niches with larger-scale planetary processes, tidal currents, mineral deposition, and the slow, rhythmic shaping of early Earth's surface, continuing our calm, meditative journey through this ancient world. And now, let us drift a little further, turning our attention to the gentle, unhurried rhythms of the oceans and the planet itself. The tidal currents that move water, the sediments that settle slowly, and the early planetary processes that quietly shape Earth 3 billion years ago. Picture the shallow seas along the edges of early continental fragments. The water moves in soft, steady rhythms, drawn by tidal forces as the moon orbits the Earth, and as the planet itself rotates. These tides are gentle yet persistent, ebbing and flowing across the tiny bays and shallow shelves. Notice how each movement, each ripple, shapes the sediments, guiding them into subtle layers that will slowly become the record of Earth's earliest environments. Observe the sediments themselves. Minute grains of quartz, feldspar, and mica, formed over eons within the cooling crust, drift gently in the tidal waters. They settle in quiet layers, accumulating where the water slows, forming beds that will eventually become stone. Each layer is a record, a patient witness to the rhythms of currents, the chemistry of the water, and the presence of life in these ancient oceans. Now imagine the gentle deposition of minerals. Iron, slowly oxidized by early photosynthetic microbes, settles in subtle bands along the ocean floor. Sulfur compounds and other elements mingle with water and sediments, creating faint streaks and layers. These mineral deposits are almost imperceptible in the moment. Yet over millions of years, they preserve chemical evidence of early life and environmental change. They are quiet signatures of a world in transformation, waiting to be noticed by eyes far in the future. Consider how tidal currents interact with these deposits. Water flowing in and out moves fine particles from one place to another, redistributing minerals and sediments in patterns that are slow, rhythmic, and complex. Some areas become enriched with nutrients and minerals, others less so. These subtle differences create distinct microenvironments, shaping the ecological niches where microbial mats and stromatolites can thrive. Life and planetary forces are intertwined in a delicate, patient dialogue. Drift now to the deeper waters where currents are calmer, yet still moving. Here, sediments settle with extraordinary patience, forming layered deposits that are almost like pages in a book. Each layer contains chemical clues, ratios of isotopes, traces of organic matter, faint hints of oxygen or sulfur. These layers record the interplay between tides, mineral deposition, and microbial life, preserving a story that will endure for billions of years. Notice the broader planetary processes at work. The interior of the Earth continues to shape the surface. Heat from the mantle drives slow tectonic movements, creating rifts, folding early continental fragments, and guiding the flow of water across the young land. Volcanic activity releases minerals into the oceans, providing raw materials that will mix with sediments and organic matter. Even in its slowest rhythms, the planet is active, continuously shaping the environments where life can persist. Imagine the edges of these continental fragments, where tidal currents meet rocky shores. Fine sediments are carried into shallow pools. Chemical reactions occur between water and minerals, and microbial mats respond to the changing conditions. Over thousands of years, subtle changes in water chemistry, sediment deposition, and mineral availability create new niches, small pockets of ecological diversity that will slowly multiply across the Earth's surface. Reflect on the quiet balance of these processes. Currents, sediments, minerals, and life all interact without drama, without urgency. They are patient, subtle, and enduring. No single tide or mineral deposit is decisive, but the continuous, layered interactions shape the environment and leave enduring signatures of Earth's earliest history. As you drift above these shallow oceans and continental margins, notice how every action, no matter how small, contributes to the ongoing transformation of the planet. Tiny microbial mats influence mineral deposition. Tidal currents redistribute sediments. Volcanic minerals react with water. Each movement, each interaction, is part of a larger, patient system that has been unfolding for millions of years. Now, imagine the calm repetition of these rhythms over vast stretches of time. Currents ebb and flow, sediments settle and layer, minerals react and crystallize, continents slowly shift. The planet's processes are steady, patient, and persistent, creating the structure and chemistry that will support life for billions of years to come. So linger here a moment, observing the subtle interplay of tides, sediments, minerals, and early life. Notice how every element, every movement, every chemical reaction contributes to the quiet shaping of Earth 3 billion years ago. The oceans, the sediments, the minerals, and the life forms are all interconnected, moving together in a slow, deliberate rhythm that has endured across eons. And soon, when you are ready, we may drift a little further, exploring the earliest interactions between evolving microbial life and the gradual changes in Earth's oceans and crust, continuing our calm, meditative journey through this ancient world, layer by layer, process by process. And now, let us drift a little further, turning our attention to the quiet, patient dialogue between the living world and the solid foundation of the planet. The microbial life that thrives in the oceans, the chemical traces it leaves, and the early continental crust it subtly influences. Picture the shallow coastal regions of the early continents, where water laps gently over rocky surfaces. Here, in these quiet spaces, microbial mats cling to mineral-rich sediments. These mats are not visible on the scale of continents, yet they are persistent, resilient, and profoundly influential. They interact with the crust, the water, and the chemistry of their surroundings, shaping conditions in ways that will ripple forward across billions of years. Notice the subtle transformations taking place. Microbes release oxygen as a byproduct of photosynthesis, tiny bubbles that dissolve slowly into the surrounding water. Some oxygen reacts immediately with minerals, forming faint streaks of rust-colored iron deposits. Others accumulate more gradually, influencing chemical gradients in the oceans. In this patient interaction, the living and non-living parts of Earth are in a delicate balance, responding to and shaping each other. Now, imagine the crust beneath these microbial mats. Small cracks and pores in rocks allow water and dissolved minerals to seep in, carrying nutrients that feed the microbial communities. In turn, the microbes release chemicals that alter the local mineral composition, promoting subtle reactions that can strengthen the crust or create new patterns of deposition. Even in these microscopic interactions, the story of Earth is being quietly rewritten. Drift with your mind over the shallow seas, observing variations in microbial activity. In some pools, mats grow thick and robust, trapping sediments and forming small layered structures. In others, growth is sparse, influenced by differences in water chemistry, mineral availability, or sunlight. These small differences create diversity within the ecosystem, establishing early ecological niches that respond to both biological and geological conditions. Consider the cycles that govern these interactions. Microbial life responds to light, chemical availability, and water movement. Water responds to tides, currents, and temperature. Rocks respond to chemical reactions and the slow pressures of tectonic shifts. All these processes are interconnected in quiet, patient rhythms. No single event dominates. The system evolves gradually, with persistence and repetition shaping the trajectory of the planet. Observe how microbial activity influences sediment deposition. Trapped particles form gentle layers atop the crust, gradually building up small mounds that will become the first stromatolites. These layered structures subtly redirect water flow, influence nutrient distribution, and create new microenvironments for other microbial communities. In this way, life is shaping its own habitat while remaining intimately connected to the physical structure of the Earth. Now drift to slightly deeper waters, where microbial mats are thinner and sediments finer. Chemical gradients become more important here. Oxygen levels vary, sulfides accumulate, and iron-rich minerals slowly settle. Microbes adapt to these conditions, thriving in pockets where the chemistry suits them. In turn, their metabolism alters the water's composition, leaving chemical traces that will persist in sediments and rocks long after the microbes themselves are gone. Notice the subtle feedback loops between life and crust. Minerals provide surfaces and nutrients. Microbes alter mineral chemistry. Sediments accumulate, preserving evidence of both geological and biological processes. Currents and tides move these materials, reshaping environments in small but persistent ways. Everything is connected, unfolding patiently, layer by layer, over immense spans of time. Imagine now the slow accumulation of these interactions across larger scales. Coastal shelves, shallow bays, and sediment-rich tidal flats become mosaics of microbial activity, mineral deposition, and chemical transformation. Each microenvironment contributes to the overall evolution of the ocean and continental interface, creating a planetary system in which life and geology are inseparable, shaping each other gently but profoundly. As you drift above these ancient shores, reflect on the endurance and patience of these processes. Microbes are small, yet their influence is long-lasting. Rocks are inert, yet they record and preserve the echoes of life's activity. Water is fluid, yet it carries nutrients, minerals, and chemical signals across vast distances. Together, these elements form an early Earth in quiet balance, a world where life and geology are partners in the slow unfolding of planetary history. So linger here a moment, observing the ongoing dialogue between microbial mats, oceans, and crust. Watch how every bubble, every layer, every subtle chemical shift contributes to the gradual shaping of Earth 3 billion years ago. Notice how these interactions are patient, persistent, and deeply interconnected. Life and the planet exist in harmony, each quietly shaping the other, each leaving enduring marks that will echo across the eons. And soon, when you are ready, we may drift a little further, exploring the early chemical cycles and the interactions between microbial activity and ocean chemistry on a planetary scale, continuing our calm, meditative journey through this ancient world. And now, let us drift a little further, turning our attention to the subtle, patient interplay of chemistry and life in the oceans of Earth 3 billion years ago. Here, in the quiet currents and shallow seas, Microbial activity begins to shape chemical cycles, influencing the composition of water, sediments, and even the emerging atmosphere. Picture the shallow seas again, where microbial mats and stromatolites grow patiently on the ocean floor. Each organism is a tiny engine of chemical change. Photosynthetic microbes slowly release oxygen, iron reacts with it to form delicate mineral bands, and sulfur-cycling bacteria process sulfates in the water. These processes are gentle, layered, and ongoing, yet together, they set the stage for the first large-scale chemical cycles on Earth. Notice how oxygen begins to appear in small pockets, combining with iron and sulfur to create faintly colored streaks in the sediments. Some oxygen dissolves in the water, while some reacts immediately with minerals, leaving subtle chemical traces. This balance between production and absorption creates gradients, small but measurable, across the ocean. In these gradients, life adapts, diversifies, and leaves records of its presence. Now, let your awareness drift to the sulfur cycle. Microbes in the oceans take in sulfates and release hydrogen sulfide. These chemicals move slowly through the water, interacting with metals and sediments. The reactions are subtle, almost invisible, yet they influence which organisms thrive in particular regions. Shallow tidal flats may favor oxygen-tolerant microbes, while deeper or more stagnant pools support sulfur-cycling organisms. Each process contributes to the formation of distinct microenvironments, quietly shaping early ecosystems. Consider the nitrogen cycle, still in its earliest stages. Some microbes capture nitrogen from seawater, transforming it into forms that can be used for growth. These tiny chemical exchanges are imperceptible to the human eye, yet over millions of years, they build the framework for nutrient availability, supporting the persistence of microbial mats and the slow accumulation of organic matter in sediments. Observe the interplay between microbial metabolism and mineral deposition. Microbes produce organic compounds that bind sediments together, helping form stromatolites. Their chemical byproducts influence the precipitation of minerals, subtly altering the composition of rocks and sediments over time. Each layer in a stromatolite is a record of these interactions, a quiet archive of biological and chemical activity. Drift now across the broader ocean. Currents carry dissolved nutrients, oxygen, sulfides, and other compounds over vast distances. Chemical gradients persist, linking different regions of the ocean in subtle, interconnected cycles. Microbes respond to these gradients, forming communities that vary depending on local conditions. The planet's chemistry is not uniform, it is a mosaic, shaped by biological and geological processes in patient, layered rhythms. Notice the feedback loops that govern these cycles. Oxygen released by photosynthesis interacts with iron, sulfur, and nitrogen compounds. These reactions influence microbial growth, which in turn affects chemical distribution. Sediment deposition records the chemical changes. Currents move compounds, connecting different parts of the ocean in a quiet, ongoing dialogue. The cycles are slow, but persistent, shaping Earth on a scale that will only become obvious over millions of years. Imagine the subtle color changes in the water as chemical reactions occur. Patches may become slightly tinted by dissolved iron or sulfides, while areas with high microbial activity show faint oxygenation. These visual cues are gentle, almost imperceptible, yet they reveal the dynamic chemistry of early oceans, a world alive with chemical processes and microbial influence. Reflect on the connection between these chemical cycles and the emerging continental crust. Minerals released by weathering of the early crust feed the oceans with iron, silica, and other elements. Microbial metabolism transforms these chemicals, returning some to sediments, some to the atmosphere. Life and geology are intertwined, creating cycles that regulate nutrients, chemistry, and energy flow across the planet. Now, Imagine drifting over a wide expanse of shallow seas, observing the continuous but patient activity. Microbes producing oxygen, sulfur compounds moving through the water, iron settling in layered bands, nitrogen being fixed, and sediments slowly accumulating. Each process contributes to the establishment of Earth's earliest global chemical cycles, forming the invisible framework that will sustain life for billions of years. So linger here a while, observing the slow, patient rhythms of microbial influence on ocean chemistry. Notice the intricate interplay of oxygen, sulfur, nitrogen, minerals, and life. Observe how each subtle action, repeated over immense spans of time, gradually shapes the Earth's oceans, sediments, and crust. This is the world 3 billion years ago. A quiet, patient, interconnected system, alive in its smallest components and enduring in its chemical and geological memory. And soon, when you are ready, we may drift a little further, exploring the subtle rise of oxygen in the atmosphere and its gradual impact on ocean chemistry and early life, continuing our calm, meditative journey through this ancient world. And now, let us drift a little further, following the quiet thread of oxygen as it begins to weave through the oceans and the earliest atmosphere of Earth 3 billion years ago. This is not a sudden transformation, but a patient, layered process, unfolding slowly over immense spans of time, marked by subtle chemical and biological interactions. Picture the shallow seas where stromatolites rise and microbial mats cling to sediments. Photosynthetic microbes continue their steady work, converting sunlight into energy and releasing minute quantities of oxygen. Most of this oxygen reacts immediately with dissolved iron, sulfur, and other elements in the water. Only gradually does it accumulate in pockets where minerals are already saturated, creating the first hints of oxygen-rich zones in the oceans. Notice how the iron-rich sediments of the seafloor act as a sponge, absorbing oxygen as it is produced. Rust-colored layers form slowly, capturing the chemical footprint of early life. Over time, these layers become extensive, recording the steady output of microbial metabolism. In this patient rhythm, the oceans are both a canvas and a participant, responding to life while preserving its history in stone. Now drift to the surface of the water, where oxygen begins to diffuse very slowly into the atmosphere. The air above remains mostly nitrogen and carbon dioxide, but faint traces of oxygen begin to appear, like a whisper of change in a vast, unhurried sky. This early oxygen is fleeting, often consumed immediately by chemical reactions. Yet its presence hints at the profound transformations that will come over millions of years. Observe the interplay between oxygen, water, and minerals. In some regions, oxygen accumulates enough to influence the chemical composition of seawater. It interacts with sulfur compounds, creating sulfate minerals that settle in layered patterns on the ocean floor. Iron continues to oxidize, forming extensive banded iron formations, silent evidence of the gradual oxygenation of the planet. Consider how microbial life responds to these changes. Microbes in oxygen-rich microenvironments begin to adapt, developing new metabolic pathways. Others remain in low-oxygen niches, thriving where chemical conditions suit them. In this way, oxygen shapes the ecology of early Earth subtly but profoundly, guiding the evolution of life while leaving chemical signatures in rocks and sediments. Notice the patient accumulation of these processes on a planetary scale. Over millions of years, oxygen continues to build in the oceans, slowly altering the chemical balance. Even when the atmosphere is not yet fully oxygenated, these changes in water chemistry affect the formation of minerals, the distribution of sediments, and the survival of microbial communities. Life and planetary chemistry remain intertwined in a quiet, enduring dialogue. Drift now across broader stretches of ocean. Tidal currents and waves distribute oxygen, iron, and sulfur compounds across the shallow seas. Gradients emerge pockets with slightly higher oxygen, others with more reduced compounds. Microbial communities respond, thriving in niches that match their chemical preferences. These gradients are small but persistent, forming the early framework of Earth's chemical and biological diversity. Imagine the slow feedback loops between the oceans and the atmosphere. Oxygen released into water slowly diffuses upward, influencing local air composition. Some oxygen reacts immediately with minerals and sediments. Some persists, moving gradually into the air. The oceans act as both a buffer and a mediator, controlling the rate of oxygen accumulation and shaping the chemical environment for life. Reflect on the enduring consequences of these early oxygen traces. Though still minimal, they are the first signs of a world capable of supporting more complex chemistry and, eventually, more complex life. The banded iron formations, the oxidized sediments, and the chemical gradients are all quiet markers of a planet transforming, slowly but inexorably, under the patient influence of microbial life. As you drift over these early oceans and shallow seas, notice how oxygen is both subtle and pervasive. It moves quietly through water, sediments, and air, interacting with minerals and microbes, shaping environments in ways that are nearly invisible yet profoundly influential. The Earth 3 billion years ago is a world in slow motion, patient, layered, and deeply interconnected. So linger here a while, observing the gradual oxygenation of oceans and the faint hints in the atmosphere above. Notice how life, chemistry, and minerals interact in a quiet, enduring rhythm. Every reaction, every bubble, every oxidized grain of sediment contributes to the slow transformation of the planet, creating the foundation for the more oxygen-rich world that will emerge in the distant future. And soon, when you are ready, we may drift a little further, exploring the earliest emergence of more complex microbial ecosystems and their role in shaping chemical cycles, continuing our calm, meditative, historically grounded journey through the Earth 3 billion years ago. And now, let us drift a little further, turning our attention to the earliest emergence of complex microbial ecosystems. A quiet, patient expansion of life in the oceans, and along the edges of the emerging continental fragments of Earth 3 billion years ago. Picture the shallow coastal waters, where stromatolites rise in small mounds and microbial mats cling patiently to sediments. In these spaces, life is no longer a series of isolated microbes, but an interconnected web, subtle yet profound. Different species of microbes inhabit slightly different niches. Some photosynthetic, releasing oxygen in faint amounts. Others metabolizing sulfur or nitrogen, recycling nutrients through water and sediments. Observe how these communities interact. Microbes grow in layers, each layer influencing the conditions above and below. Oxygen produced in one layer reacts with minerals, or is absorbed by neighboring organisms. Sulfur or nitrogen compounds diffuse slowly, feeding other microbes or precipitating as subtle mineral deposits. Each microbe is small, almost imperceptible, yet collectively they shape the chemical, physical, and biological structure of their habitat. Notice the creation of microgradients within these ecosystems. Some zones become slightly richer in oxygen, while others remain chemically reduced. Microbes adapt to these local conditions, forming specialized communities that are interdependent. In this quiet way, ecological complexity begins to emerge. Life is shaping its environment, and the environment is, in turn, shaping life. And now, let us drift a little further, turning our attention to the earliest emergence of complex microbial ecosystems. A quiet, patient expansion of life in the oceans and along the edges of the emerging continental fragments of Earth 3 billion years ago. Picture the shallow coastal waters, where stromatolites rise in small mounds and microbial mats cling patiently to sediments. In these spaces, life is no longer a series of isolated microbes, but an interconnected web, subtle yet profound. Different species of microbes inhabit slightly different niches. Some photosynthetic, releasing oxygen in faint amounts. Others metabolizing sulfur or nitrogen, recycling nutrients through water and sediments. Observe how these communities interact. Microbes grow in layers, each layer influencing the conditions above and below. Oxygen produced in one layer reacts with minerals, or is absorbed by neighboring organisms. Sulfur or nitrogen compounds diffuse slowly, feeding other microbes or precipitating as subtle mineral deposits. Each microbe is small, almost imperceptible, yet collectively they shape the chemical, physical, and biological structure of their habitat. Notice the creation of microgradients within these ecosystems. Some zones become slightly richer in oxygen, while others remain chemically reduced. Microbes adapt to these local conditions, forming specialized communities that are interdependent. In this quiet way, ecological complexity begins to emerge. Life is shaping its environment, and the environment is, in turn, shaping life. Now drift further across the shallow seas, imagining patches of stromatolites separated by small channels of water. Tidal currents gently redistribute nutrients, oxygen, and chemical compounds, connecting distant microbial communities. Even over small distances, these flows create subtle differences in growth and activity, guiding the expansion of microbial mats and the layering of sediment structures. Consider how feedback loops develop within these ecosystems. Oxygen from photosynthesis reacts with iron and sulfur, altering sediment chemistry. Nutrients trapped in sediments are slowly recycled back into the water column. Microbial communities respond, adjusting growth patterns, metabolism, and chemical output. In this patient rhythm, ecosystems are forming the first enduring networks of interaction on the planet. Notice the diversity of metabolic strategies. Some microbes thrive in sunlit shallows, converting carbon dioxide and light into energy. Others survive in darker or chemically distinct pockets, metabolizing sulfur, iron, or nitrogen compounds. These strategies create complementary niches, allowing multiple communities to coexist in close proximity, quietly partitioning resources and shaping the overall ecosystem. Now drift deeper into the influence of sediments on these microbial communities. Layered sediments provide both a physical substrate for attachment and a chemical environment that moderates nutrient availability. Microbes influence sediment deposition through their growth, excretion of sticky organic compounds, and chemical transformations. In turn, sediment accumulation modifies water flow, mineral distribution, and habitat stability. Life and geology are intertwined, co-creating a dynamic yet calm system. Observe how these early ecosystems extend across larger areas. Networks of microbial mats connect bays, tidal flats, and shallow shelves. Oxygen, sulfur, and nitrogen gradients guide growth, while currents redistribute nutrients and chemical compounds. Sediments accumulate slowly, forming stromatolites and other layered structures that will persist as the first fossil records of life. Complexity is emerging, not in sudden leaps, but in patient, cumulative interactions over millions of years. Reflect on the subtle power of these microbial ecosystems. Though invisible to the naked eye, they are shaping the chemistry of oceans, influencing mineral deposition, and establishing the early framework for biological interactions on Earth. Each small metabolic process contributes to chemical cycles, nutrient availability, and habitat formation. Life and planetary chemistry are inseparable, evolving together in a quiet, enduring rhythm. Finally, Imagine the patient persistence of these ecosystems through small changes in tides, currents, and chemical composition. Microbial mats adapt to varying light levels, sediment influx, and nutrient gradients. Ecosystems expand, contract, and reorganize, always maintaining a balance between growth and environmental conditions. These are the first examples of ecological complexity on Earth, quietly establishing the template for future biological systems. So linger here a while, observing the emergence of these complex microbial ecosystems. Notice how life, water, minerals, and chemical gradients interact in subtle, persistent rhythms. Each microbe, each layer, each chemical trace contributes to a network of interactions that is small yet profound, a patient, enduring pattern in the slow evolution of Earth 3 billion years ago. And now, we arrive at the final stretch of our journey, looking back across the patient-layered transformations that shaped Earth 3 billion years ago. Let us linger here, gathering the quiet threads we have followed, and weave them into a single, steady reflection. Think of the atmosphere we began with, thin, fragile, and lacking oxygen. A sky of nitrogen and carbon dioxide, softened by faint sunlight filtered through haze. This was the backdrop, the canvas, upon which the story of early Earth unfolded. Then remember the oceans, vast and dynamic, covering much of the surface. Waters carried minerals, salts, and dissolved gases, endlessly stirred by tides, winds, and the pull of the moon. Within these waters, the earliest whispers of life took hold, microbes clinging to sediments, stromatolites slowly rising, each layer a record of persistence. Photosynthesis emerged as a new way to gather energy, capturing sunlight and releasing oxygen. Most of that oxygen disappeared into chemical reactions, rusting iron, altering sulfur compounds, but some lingered, accumulating first in oceans, then in the air. It was a quiet shift, imperceptible in any moment, yet transformative over millions of years. Drift now to the continents, still small and scattered, their crust forming and reforming under the slow movement of tectonic plates. Volcanic islands rose and sank, while early cratons, the ancient cores of continents, grew through cycles of heat, pressure, and mineral crystallization. These processes gave life new footholds, places where land met water, where microbial mats and tidal flats expanded. Within this world, ecosystems became more complex. Microbes arranged themselves in layers, each layer using the byproducts of the one above or below. Chemical gradients shaped communities, creating quiet cooperation and resilience. Ecosystems extended across wide shallows, influencing ocean chemistry and even leaving behind enduring geological records, banded iron formations, stromatolites, mineral deposits, evidence of life's patient influence. As oxygen slowly accumulated, cycles of nitrogen, sulfur, and carbon grew more intricate. Microbes adapted to new conditions, expanding their range of metabolisms. Life was not static. It was dynamic, flexible, and always entangled with the chemistry of the planet itself. Step back now, and imagine the planet as a whole. 3 billion years ago, Earth was already alive, already dynamic, already complex. The continents drifted, the oceans moved, the atmosphere shifted, and life persisted, small, quiet, microbial, yet profoundly influential. The story of Earth at this time is not one of sudden leaps, but of patient, layered accumulation, where every chemical trace, every sediment grain, every microbial layer contributed to the shape of a living planet. Reflect on the impermanence of it all. Most of the organisms from that time left no direct trace. Their bodies dissolved, their habitats eroded, their stories forgotten. And yet, something of them remains. In the banded rocks, in the oxygen-rich atmosphere we now breathe, in the very possibility of our own existence. The work of those early microbes continues to echo, billions of years later. So here, at the close of our journey, notice the balance. Silence and persistence, fragility and endurance, change and continuity. Earth 3 billion years ago was not empty. It was alive with processes both visible and invisible, carrying forward the rhythms of geology, chemistry, and biology. And as we step away from this moment, let us carry the understanding that we too are part of this vast continuum. Our existence is possible only because of those ancient seas, those first microbes, those patient chemical transformations. The story is not finished. It continues still, with us, within us, and beyond us. This is where we end our journey, not with finality, but with continuity. The planet endures. Life endures. The record of deep time waits, patient and vast, for those who pause to listen.